So thank you very much for joining us today for our session on Salesforce's Appexchange. My name's Tom Cannon, and I'm part of the Appexchange group at Salesforce, which is part of the tech and products organization at Salesforce. So work on the product team. I'm joined today by a bunch of my colleagues who work in the ISV team. Just a quick show of hands, who's heard of Salesforce's Appexchange before today? Okay, fantastic. All right, great. So we're going to talk today mostly about the platform. This is a CTO track, so we're going to focus on technology, but we're also going to talk about the marketplace and the program that runs alongside that. So hopefully it'll be useful. So in true Salesforce style, I couldn't possibly start any presentation without a brief message from our lawyers. Please do make any decisions you make today based on software which is currently available, not stuff that may be available in the future. So when I first saw this stat from Gartner, at first I was a little bit underwhelmed. Right? It actually seems quite surprising to me. 55% of large enterprises will be all cloud by 2025. My initial reaction was, seems quite a long time. Why not sooner? But then I started to, as I thought about it a bit more and tried to kind of digest what it meant. I mean, I think we're all here because we all realize that SaaS is the future, right? Not even the future, SaaS is here now. There's no longer an argument about whether the cloud is the way forward. So why is this date so far out? But what I noticed was that this is large enterprises, and I come from a large enterprise myself where we had a software budget of $4.5 billion. I get large enterprises, and I get how slow they are to move. So to me, this was actually a signal that we are entering the final phase of this journey, where we're going to start to see some of the largest enterprises on the planet move to 100% sales cloud strategy. So that's great news for Salesforce, of course, because we have some of the world's leading SaaS products. We're leaders in the CRM market, which includes marketing, it includes sales, and includes service. So this is great news for us. But of course, there's a problem. And the problem is that we only sell to the customer-facing roles at Salesforce. So think about it. You've got all of these companies, most of the Fortune 100, most of the Fortune 500, who have invested in the cloud. They put their confidence in the cloud for their customer-facing systems, which is arguably the most sensitive and important data they have. But we only have products in about 10% of that organization. So all of these other departments, HR, IT operations, finance, Salesforce doesn't have products for those organizations, right? And of course, industries as well. Industries are not something that we have a depth in at Salesforce. We have industry products, financial services, healthcare, etc., but we rely on our partner ecosystem to really bring that specialist knowledge and this specialist applications to help us build out a robust portfolio in that ecosystem. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. I'm going to talk to you about the Appexchange, which is the heart of that ecosystem. It's the Salesforce Store, and we're going to talk about the platform, and we're going to talk about the marketplace, and we're going to talk about the program that goes along with that. Before I get into that, though, we'll be pausing at the end for some questions. We're using Slido today, so if you want to go to slido.com, put the hashtag SaaStock in, and then choose the CTO track, you'll find this session. Please give us your questions, and we'll pause at the end to answer any of those that you may have. And we're available right at the front of the building here if you want to talk to us in person. So let's dive in. If you've ever been to a Salesforce presentation, you've probably seen something similar to this slide before. It's the story that we always tell about Salesforce, right? We started off 18 years ago with a very simple idea, but quite a radical idea, which was that business software should be as easy to buy as getting a book from Amazon. Now, it sounds kind of obvious now, but at the time when Mark Benioff had this idea, he was an exec at Oracle, the world's archetypal on-premise big software business. It was kind of ludicrous. It wasn't a mainstream idea at all, and it didn't become so for many, many years. But it was founded on three principles. So the first one was their technology model, and what is the multi-tenant cloud model. So the idea that every single one of our customers shares precisely the same version of the software, not an installed version for their particular company, but the same software at the time was radical. It's difficult to overstate how radical that idea was. And it still, to this day, is the real foundation of Salesforce's success. It's because at the same time we launched a new business model, which was the subscription, which again now is very much a mainstream idea, but back then it really wasn't. Why would you give up the huge on-prem payload that you get at the end of your sales cycle for something which you have to recognize every month of the year for eternity? It seemed ludicrous at the time. But actually, these two things have become the foundation of the Salesforce model, this self-fulfilling cycle where we have to keep innovating in our product, because if we don't, our customers stop paying the subscription because it's very easy to leave. And if they stop, but because they keep investing in the product and they keep their subscription, we're able to continue to push innovation into that platform. And because it's a multi-tenant model, everybody gets it. We don't have the concept of upgrades. Everyone gets the same version at the same time across the world. It takes about 5 minutes, 3 times a year. So this really is the heart of the Salesforce model, and it's the model that many of you share with us, and I'm sure you get very well, and still to this day is at the heart of what we do. And we also started with a 1-1-1 model, the idea that we give 1% of our product, 1% of our time, 1% of our product to worthy causes, and that's still very much a part of our culture today, and if you want to talk about that, I'd be very, very happy to do so. But again, that wasn't enough. We realized after a while that there's a problem, and I think it's summarized best by what's known as Joy's Law. So Bill Joy, one of the founders of Sun Microsystems, once famously said, it doesn't matter who you are, most of the smartest people are going to work for somebody else. And that's as true now, it's as true in SaaS as it was back in the days of Oracle and Microsoft. And this became the foundation of a strategy, and actually it was a conversation between Mark Benioff and Steve Jobs that led to the formation of the Appexchange. It was a kind of mentoring session. They were going for a walk, as Jobs is sort of famous for doing. And he made a comment to Benioff that you need to build an ecosystem. You need to build an ecosystem of apps because you can't do it all on your own. So Mark went off and registered Appexchange.com, a bunch of other names, including App Store. And bear in mind, this was 4 years before the launch of Apple's App Store. And when Apple launched their App Store in 2008, Benioff gave Apple the App Store domain name that he registered all those years before. So it's a kind of, it's a nice little alignment between those two organizations. We're both there right at the beginning of this idea of having an app marketplace to support the ecosystem. So in 2006, we launched the Appexchange. So at the time, it was the world's first app marketplace, certainly for business apps, but this predates the App Store and predates the Google Play Store by at least a couple of years. And this has been a huge success for us. This really has been foundational to the success of Salesforce, right? So we're just about to approach this month, in fact, 5 million installs, and the growth rate for installs from our customers is like a hockey stick as it's starting to mature. It took us about 5 years to get to the first million. It took us about 2 years to get to the second million. And now in the 2 years that followed, we've gone from 3 million to 5 million very, very quickly. And just to be clear, those installs are installs per customer. So one customer might install 10 licenses, they might install 10,000, they might install 100,000. So these are customer installs of enterprise products as opposed to individual users. What's astonishing to me is that 83% of our customers have at least one Appexchange app installed in their organization. So this is up actually from 79% last year. So we're seeing that accelerate too. Even more surprising is that when you get to the point of having 6 or more applications, that's 1/4 of our customer base. 1/4 of our customer base have at least 6 apps installed in their Salesforce org, which is phenomenal to me. And what's great about that is that means that the attrition of those customers drops by 50%. So this really is central to, as you know, in a SaaS model, minimizing attrition and minimizing churn. And the Appexchange strategy for us is really the cornerstone of that. And it's often the reason that customers cite when we do win-loss analysis for choosing Salesforce over a competition. Because of the size of the ecosystem, the robustness and the maturity of the ecosystem, people know they're not just buying Salesforce, but they're buying access to a whole range of best-of-breed solutions for everything from back office management of finances through to HR, to things like call centers, etc. So our partners see an average of about 48% year-on-year growth. And those are partners who have invested at least half of their business into Salesforce. So these are doing half of their revenues through Salesforce. These customers are typically seeing about 50% growth, and we're seeing a huge impact on the wider ecosystem globally. We expect by 2020, IDC say that we're going to create about 2.8 million jobs in the Salesforce ecosystem, and a net GDP impact of almost $400 million. And that's not just from Salesforce, that's from Salesforce and the related jobs, the direct and indirect jobs that the ecosystem's creating as it grows. And if you want to see a copy of that report, let me know afterwards and I'll be happy to provide it. But something else has happened in that 10 years, right? We, at the time, as much as we would like to pretend that we predict the future, we didn't know that within a decade everyone would be walking around with a supercomputer in their pocket that was constantly connected to a network of other supercomputers, sharing petabytes of data every second with artificially intelligent algorithms running on top of that data, doing things that we didn't imagine. But of course, the fact that we had this cloud model put us in a fantastic place to take advantage of that change, to ride that wave. And it's been a series of successive waves over the last few years. And people often sort of laugh at Salesforce for the way that we're constantly reinventing ourselves. We have a conference every year you might have heard of called Dreamforce, like 150,000 people get together in San Francisco, talk about Salesforce. And every year we launch something new. Last year it was artificial intelligence. The year before it was a new user interface design. But this is really the essence of Salesforce. Whilst we're now going to be a $10 billion company this year, we never believe that we can stop reinventing ourselves. We are constantly becoming the next version of ourselves. And we're still fighting for our life against some of the biggest and most aggressive software companies in the world. And so every year we have to find a way to invent who we are, to reinvent who we are, and to become the next version of ourselves. And the reason I wanted to highlight this is because as we move through these various iterations of technology and these big best place in things like artificial intelligence, analytics, IoT, we take that same software, and because of the nature of our platform, we unbundle it and we give it to our partners. So as soon as we can, it's not always immediately, but we'll take those same capabilities. So what we announced last year in terms of artificial intelligence via Einstein, we will be announcing this year that we're giving that to our partners as something that they can use to build apps on top of. So this is really a very clear strategy of us and something that really sets us apart from other people in space. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that now. So let's focus on the technology. So Gartner rates Salesforce. So who's aware, but just by a quick show of hands, who's aware that Salesforce has a platform that underpins the CRM application? Okay, that's pretty good. I often describe it as the best kept secret in technology. Most people know that Salesforce is a CRM platform, of course. But most people don't know that underpinning Salesforce is a platform. It's a very different kind of platform. It's not just slightly different, it's radically different to every other platform that you see in the market. And we'll talk about why, but Gartner call it an application platform as a service, and they rank us a leader and have done for many years now. But even that I don't think really does justice. So I'm just going to sort of highlight the differences between us and the typical platform as a service. So if you think of a typical PaaS, a typical platform as a service, starts off as an infrastructure as a service place. So think of Amazon, good friends of ours, a product we use extensively as well, is at its heart an infrastructure as a service. But of course, as those organizations want to provide more value to their users, they start to layer on services on top of it. So as a developer using their compute and storage, you can avail yourself of different things like security and identity and artificial intelligence and analytics to expedite your development process to get to market quicker. And these platforms are generally general purpose, right? Again, which is great. We use AWS extensively. We actually use Azure as well. You can build anything from Netflix to Angry Birds to a B2C application to a B2B application. That's what these platforms are designed for, and that is fantastic. But that's not what we do. So we take almost the opposite approach. We start off with the applications. So Salesforce only does one thing. It builds enterprise SaaS applications. And we like to think we build the best in the world, and certainly one of the best SaaS applications in the world. And we have a suite of those. So we start off in that place, and we're constantly delivering new value, new functionality to our customers to satisfy that cycle that I talked about right at the beginning. So then what we do is we unbundle that software. So every time we deliver something to our customers, just as soon as we can, we take that capability, we unbundle it from the application, and we give it as a platform feature to our partners. So things like the infrastructure, things like the core capabilities, things like reporting, search, these days social, mobile, these kinds of capabilities that are mission critical for you to deliver your application to your customers, but they don't really add the value, right? That 80%, which is the same for every single SaaS application, is mission critical, but it doesn't deliver the value to your customers. What delivers the value to your customers is that 20% on top, the innovation, your specific IP, your knowledge. And so what we aim to do is to give you that 80% so that you can focus on that 20%. You can focus on your innovation, it gets you to market quicker, and we'll be constantly adding to that platform so you can take advantage of things like social capabilities, mobile, advances in analytics, advances in AI, without having to develop those capabilities yourself. So that's the high-level platform architecture, if you like. I'm just going to take that one level down now and look at that in a bit more detail. So for those of you who aren't aware, we do much more now than simply marketing, sales, and service. So those are the apps for which we are best known, of course. We also have a communities application that sits on front of sales or service or marketing and enables us to interact, our customers to interact with their customers and their partners in a secure way. We have an increasingly innovative analytics product, which is to augment the standard reports and dashboards functionality. We bought a company called EdgeSpring many years ago, which we then transformed into a Salesforce product deeply embedded into Salesforce, which operates on a model which is very similar to the Google search index model. So instead of going through a standard ETL process, an extraction, transformation, and loading process, we kind of turn that on its head and we extract the data, we load the data, and transformation happens on the fly in real time by indexing that data and enabling the user, the business user, to manipulate that data in any way they need to very quickly. So it enables a great amount of flexibility, it removes the need to create these upfront data models, etc. We have the app platform, which is where we're going to spend most of our time today, but our customers use this for building applications for their internal business users, and our partners use this platform for building applications for their customers. Our most recent acquisition is Commerce Cloud, the world's leading cloud-based e-commerce platform. Used to be called Demandware, and we're bringing a whole range of partners that are part of that ecosystem into our world as well. We have IoT, which is a platform based on Kafka for ingesting huge amounts of data every second, and then running that over a rules engine or a deep learning engine and taking some form of action off the back of it. And then, of course, we have the Appexchange, which is what we're talking about today. So if we look at the trusted infrastructure part of this, so we have a multi-tenant model, as we previously talked about, that has a metadata layer that sits on top of it. And what that means is that our customers are able to make their own changes to their application, to highly customize those applications for their own use without preventing us to do an upgrade 3 times a year without touching any of their code. And we go through a huge process called the Hammer 3 times a year, which takes every customer org, makes a copy of it, and runs a bunch of automated tests to make sure that when we go through the final upgrade, we have very, very few bugs that manifest. And the same is true of all of the partner applications. Those same applications all have inbuilt tests, and we run those tests to make sure that partner applications are bug-free as well when they go into deployment. We, of course, have one of the world's most trusted cloud infrastructures, and we like to say at Salesforce, it's our number one value. We invest an enormous amount. And if I were to highlight one thing that's changed over the last decade that I've been involved in the Salesforce ecosystem, it's that when we started, the typical view of CIO internally at one of our customers would be, I don't trust Salesforce, I need to own the security myself. These days, I think most CIOs realize that they don't have the budgets, they don't have the time, they don't have the knowledge to compete or to come close to the same sort of security levels that someone like us does. So that's really been a 180 flip in terms of people's perception. It's something that we take incredibly seriously, and we invest millions in every year. We, of course, are a very highly performant, highly available platform. We're doing something like 5 billion transactions a day And by the way, about 40% of those transactions come through the APIs, not through our customer user interface. So a very heavy percentage of those are partner applications who are using the platform. As I mentioned before, we do 3 upgrades per year. And this is not optional for customers. People can't opt out of it. Everyone's on the same infrastructure. So what that means is that your customers are also going to get an upgrade 3 times a year if you're built on our platform. Whether you do anything or not, your application is going to be constantly upgraded. And we have an elastic compute platform called Heroku, which is like a high developer productivity platform, a layer that sits on top of AWS and does a very good job of managing things like continuous deployment, continuous integration, very high productivity developer operations. So not everything is suited to the Salesforce infrastructure. And if your application has components that fall into that category, Heroku is a great way of achieving very high volume compute cycles, very high volume data storage, etc. So on top of that, we've got the core capabilities. I'm not going to go into every one of these in detail, but these are the things that every software application is going to need, right? These are the things that are mission critical to your customers. These, if you like, are the required benefits that the customer needs in order to buy the product. So they range from the very mundane, things like customization and localization, something that every customer is going to need. Even the smallest business wants to customize their application to make sure it is suited to their particular business model. But that in itself is a backlog. That's a feature that you have to put on your backlog, and we provide that out of the box so that your customers can start customizing the same way they do Salesforce right from day one. They can localize. You're immediately multi-region, you're immediately multi-currency, and you're immediately multi-language from the moment you start using Salesforce. We have an incredible identity and sharing model, so it enables you to integrate with applications that you may have built off platform. If you already have a SaaS application built and you want to integrate with Salesforce, support things like SSO, SAML, etc., so you can do that integration seamlessly. And we have a whole platform around audit and compliance, and this is often, from a young startup perspective, this is often a really significant barrier. You've got your MVP out the door, you've got your first enterprise customer, and they start to send out RFPs that require things like 7 years worth of data retention, or they want an audit track. And these are often really big barriers for a company that's trying to ship a product. Salesforce has that stuff right out the box so you can just use it. Intelligence is a really big deal for us, and it really covers 3 aspects, right? It covers the ability to store billions of rows of data, and that's now something you can do on Salesforce using something called Big Objects. It's the ability to report on that, and we've already talked about the Wave platform that enables you to do very advanced analytics, and it's the ability to do artificial intelligence on that. And we have a layer that sits across all our products called Einstein, which we're making available to customers to do things like, to partners rather, to do things like sentiment analysis, image recognition, and soon to build your own predictive models. And I can't talk about that today, but in a few weeks' time at Dreamforce, we're going to announce something that we're going to make available to you. In the same that we made Force.com available for you to develop applications, this will give you the ability to develop your own models. So we do workflow, we do search, we do the ability to manage files, of course. We have an inbuilt mobile application, which means that whatever you build for your customers will immediately be available to them via the Salesforce One mobile application. So the app includes all of their Salesforce customizations, it includes any apps they built themselves, and it includes any partner app that needs to be available in it. And of course we have Chatter, and we have our community product. Who's here is familiar with Chatter? Who's used Chatter? Okay, so a few of you. So Chatter is essentially a social network that sits within the organization, and it's easy to dismiss it as really being a kind of Facebook clone, right? It's just a social network. The thing that makes it really powerful, and the reason many of our partners make it a core part of their proposition and differentiation, is because you can attach those conversations to a particular record. So if you're changing, the example I like to give is that you might have 6 weeks of conversation to change a 1 to a 2 in a database. And that conversation may take place in meetings, it may take place in email chains that's all locked away. And when somebody joins the organization, they have no idea why that happened. By having that conversation in Chatter, you can capture all of that conversation forevermore. You can get different parties in the organization to come in. So if you've got an application right now that would benefit from that kind of dialogue around changes in it, Chatter could be a really powerful option for you to add into your feature set. Now, this is the thing that probably sets us apart more than anything else. Our distribution capabilities. As I say, Salesforce only does one thing. It builds world-class enterprise SaaS applications. And of course, we have to get those applications into the hands of our customers. We have to do things like trials. We have to manage the support of those. We have to manage things like licenses. And we've learned over many years how to do that well. And so we give all of those capabilities to our partners. Things like the ability to sell via the marketplace, which is the Appexchange, the ability to bundle up your IP and protect that IP from the prying eyes of your customers, and more importantly, your competitors, through something we call a managed package. The ability to do trials, whether that be a 1-month trial, a 1-week trial, a 90-day trial, unlimited users, all of that capability is configurable within the platform. We capture lead and usage metrics for your partners, for your customers, so that you can get early warning on who may be using the application, who may be likely to trip. The ability to manage licenses, again, for a young SaaS company, can be a massive headache. The ability to brand, if you need to. All right, fantastic. To make your application, even though it's maybe hosted partially or completely on Salesforce, to make it look and feel like it's your application. And the ability to do support in the same way that Salesforce does, which is to allow the customer to grant you limited time access to log in as them. So if your customer has a bug and you need to troubleshoot it, you need your customer success team to engage with them. By giving them the ability to do your CSM to log on as them, they can do debugging, they can find out what the problem is as though they're the customer. This is a hugely powerful part of the way that Salesforce meets the needs of its customers, and again, we make that available to you. And of course, we give you the same push and pull upgrade capability that we have if you want to push those upgrades to your customers without having to wait for them to pull, which gives you the ability to have everyone on the same version of the platform. And lastly, there is a whole range of ways that you can develop your application on top of Salesforce, whether that be to build it completely native on top of the platform, or to integrate with an application that you may already have of platform to get access to the Salesforce ecosystem. Everything from a very rich set of APIs and connectivity and models for exchanging data, through to some our next generation UX capability called Lightning, which is very similar to React but native to the Salesforce platform. Right through to very extensive code deployment capabilities. So that's the platform at a high level. Now, what I want to highlight is that to use the platform is not a one-time, one-size-fits-all decision, right? So there is a range of options you can choose. You can start off with an API-only connector type model, where you've got your existing application and you're connecting straight through to it to build that integration, get access to the Salesforce ecosystem, start to monetize that, through to doing a UI integration where you're sucking your app into the Salesforce and making it visible to the user, right through to building completely native on the Salesforce platform. The truth is, most people do a combination of the two. They start off with an API integration, they start off making that connectivity, they start to test and learn, they get into the hands of customers, they start to build some confidence in what the value proposition is, what the customers need, and then they continue to migrate over piece by piece. Because the truth is that in our ecosystem, at least, the best integrated app is going to win. Here's some real data. I can't reveal the name of the partner, but this is an example of somebody who started off building a simple connector application. And in the first 4 quarters, they did relatively well. Right? They built an integration. They started to monetize that integration. They started to see some early sales. But these guys knew right from the outset that that wasn't going to be enough for the customer base that they had. The customer base they had was going to want to see a much deeper integration. So they were working on that in parallel. And after a year, they launched the second generation of that. So it wasn't completely built on the Salesforce ecosystem, on the Salesforce platform. It was largely built, but there are a couple of really high volume compute processes that needed to take place on and off platform technology that they already had. But you can see that there was a massive lift in terms of their revenue, in terms of their deal size, because of building a more integrated application. So it's, my suggestion would be, if you're looking at the ecosystem, start off small, start off achievable, and then start to build out based on what you hear from your customers and what's right for your organization. So, to program. So, as I've said before, there's one thing that Salesforce does, and it's build enterprise applications. And of course, we've talked extensively about the platform that underpins that expertise. But there's a lot more to building a SaaS business than simply the platform. And what we've tried to do is to programatize all of that knowledge, all of those resources, and give that as added value to our partner ecosystem. So there's really three things we do. First of all, we work really hard to build a huge ecosystem, a huge community of both customers and partners and developers worldwide through events and through other ways of engaging with people. And this ecosystem is enormous. And we talked earlier on about the number of jobs that we're creating, the size of the ecosystem, the rate of growth of that. We also invest in our partners. We invest in a fund through Salesforce Ventures. We launched a platform fund of $100 million just 6 months ago that we're investing in applications in the Salesforce ecosystem. And just yesterday, actually, we announced another $50 million fund targeted exclusively at artificial intelligence applications, so applications that are leveraging our Einstein platform to deliver value for our mutual customers. What I want to focus on today is the resources and programs that we deliver to help deliver that value to you. So, we do stuff digitally, as you would expect. At the heart of that is our partner community, 100,000 strong partner community where people help support each other, where they ask questions of us, where we engage with people. We have a system called Trailhead that if you haven't tried it and you're interested in Salesforce, I would highly recommend you give it a look. It's bite-sized learning. It enables you to really attack the Salesforce ecosystem in a way that's very, very simple to learn. The next generation, beyond simply reading a web page full of developer docs or going through an online tutorial, it's a really fun, engaging way to learn. I highly recommend you check it out. A series of webinars, office hours, and of course, the typical blogs and videos and that sort of thing you would expect for us to engage digitally. We also engage in a one-to-one way. So we have partner account managers, many of whom are here today. We have my team, the tech enablement team, that are there to work with you on product design and on architecture, on value proposition design, so you can really figure out what your product is going to be, how it's going to fit into the Salesforce ecosystem, and how to build the best possible product that's going to scale for your customers. We have partner success people who can help you tackle things like how to sell like Salesforce, how to minimize your attrition, how to work with SEs, how to build a great demo. So all of the knowledge that we built over the last 18 years, making that available to you to be successful. We have solution managers based both here in EMEA and in the US, and their job is to take the value proposition from our partners and to network that into the wider Salesforce sales teams, so that they're aware of our partners, they're aware of how to integrate those in their deal cycle, how to introduce them into our best customers. And partner marketing, who are there to help work through your marketing strategies with you, to help evaluate some of the things that we do internally at Salesforce, and to help guide you in the best practice that we've seen from others. So real hands-on consultative stuff, one-on-one, that helps you really to build the best possible business, working in collaboration with us, using the knowledge that we've built. And then lastly, our ecosystem of events, things like Dreamforce, things like this even, and a world tour events, huge opportunities for our developer ecosystem, our partner ecosystem, and our customer ecosystem to come together in real time, to talk to each other, to share ideas and to network, etc. There's a whole bunch of partner-specific events, things like partner forums and boot camps, etc., where we get you all together and again share best practice. The Salesforce Incubator is something we launched just a year ago at Dreamforce, and we already have a couple of cohorts through there. So if you're interested in getting much closer, Melanie from our Incubator team is here today, and I'm sure she'd be very happy to answer any questions, and Ludo over there. We have a program called the Appexchange Marketing Program, which enables you to reach out to our customer base in programmatic ways. So I think of this as the difference between SEO and SEM. You can build the best possible Appexchange listing, but that's like organic search, right? There's no way of pushing the lever on that if you need to accelerate. The Appexchange Marketing Program gives you the ability to press that lever, to accelerate if you need to invest in reaching Salesforce customers at scale through a whole range of different methods via, some innovative social media stuff, to co-branded, co-marketing stories, to direct mail, to email, etc. And last of all, our Pledge 1% ecosystem, which is really based on the same model that Salesforce started 18 years ago, but has now been externalized into a separate organization of which we're a member but no longer have control over, and it's now 1,500 strong of different organizations around the world, including major brands like Atlassian, who've committed to give something back. And this is a hugely valuable network of entrepreneurs who have the same motives around starting a business to give something back. So just a couple of examples of some partners who have been successful on the platform. So the first one I wanted to highlight, or we call these guys Trailblazers, right? So partner Trailblazers. And Fairsail are often referred to as the UK's fastest scale-up. That was until they were acquired by Sage and became Sage People, and are now a huge part of the sales of Sage's cloud strategy. So Sage is a platform that was actually started, a product that was started in 2006. The CEO, a guy called Colin Cooper, started it on his own. He was on stage with Mark Benioff at one of the first Dreamforce back in 2006 when we just launched the platform, showing his HR product, very, very early days. God knows how he even managed to build it because it was a challenge. But since then, the team is now 200 strong. It's a hugely innovative HR product built entirely on the Salesforce platform. And he's, over the years, been able to continue to innovate with a relatively small development team and focus his resources on go-to-market and sales because of building on top of the Salesforce platform. So this is a product which is entirely built on our stack, but typically doesn't sell to Salesforce customers. They don't even follow the same sales cycle as us. They sell to HR. They sell to every user in the company. They don't sell to the sales team. This is not a line of business play. This is selling to the HR department, to the CIO. So many of the customers don't even use Salesforce, at least initially. Often they tend to see the value. So this is somebody who's built on our platform but selling to non-Salesforce users, non-Salesforce customers, what we call an OEM. The other example I wanted to give, because I think it might be quite relevant to many of you, is Digital Genius. So Digital Genius are a 2-year-old startup based out of Canary Wharf in London, and they build artificial intelligence for call centers. So they take the inbound query from a message or a live chat, and they algorithmically figure out what's the best response to give that customer, and they rank those responses by a percentage. So this is 80% chance of this being the right answer. There's a 72% chance of this one being the right answer, enabling the agent to choose and to give the best response to the customer very efficiently. So it drives huge benefits in terms of efficiency for the contact center. The challenge for them was that they don't build a contact center solution, and integrating with an off-platform product can be very, very challenging, right? You've got to suddenly build all these adapters, you've got to win the heart and mind of the CIO, you've got to have that extensive product. So by aligning with the Salesforce ecosystem and really getting close to our product teams, they've been able to go to market very quickly, and these guys are having incredible growth. I can't share with you what those numbers are, but you can see by their list of customers. It's a 2-year-old startup with a bunch of guys who are smart but don't look old enough to be selling to the likes of KLM and Unilever. These are incredibly innovative guys who've seen a huge amount of success by integrating their off-platform technology with the Salesforce platform. So, to recap, we talked about Marketplace, getting access to 150,000 of our customers. We talked about the platform, which enables you to build a product right from the ground up very quickly, or to integrate your product from off-platform into us. And we talked about the programmatic side and the ecosystem that gives you access to resources to help you grow and scale your business. So, if you want to find out more, I'll be taking questions in a second, and I've got some questions here on Slido. But the first thing I would encourage you to do is go to the partner community. Start by going to joinappexchange.com, find out more there, join the ecosystem, start to learn using Trailhead, start to build your application using the resources that you find there, and then finally, of course, launch and go to market on the Salesforce Appexchange. So, thank you. Can we... Go. So I've got a couple of questions here from Slido. So when planning the ecosystem, what were the main technical targets? Who asked that question? Are you here? Are you shy? Brilliant. So what we didn't want to do was to build a pure platform as a service that enabled people to simply go to market, right, to build products. What we wanted to do was enable the entire ecosystem. So what was very important to us was that we took the capabilities that we use with our customers and we gave those to our partners. And that often is a frustrating process for us because we will launch something, and the product teams that are responsible for that, the first thing they want to do is focus on the backlog, right? They want to get to the next feature and the next feature. But Mark Benioff, our CEO, is very insistent that everything we launch for our partners needs to be, for our customers, needs to be deployed to our customers, to our partners. So we focus very heavily on that, and that is probably the underpinning of the entire platform, the entire ecosystem. The second thing is that we had to preserve our ability to upgrade. And so the biggest risk for us was that we would enable this huge ecosystem of people building on top of the platform, but that ecosystem would become an anchor around their ability to innovate, because our partners would build integrations that would break. So what we did in order to facilitate that was to have every version of our API supported permanently. So we still have version 6 of our API supported. We're now on version 52. But anything that you built historically on any version of that API is still supported to this day, almost 16 years later. So those are probably the 3 things that we did: enabling distribution capabilities, enabling upgrades, and enabling that ecosystem to thrive by using the same features that we build for ourselves. Aren't you? So where do we envision the Appexchange to be heading in the next 5 years? Good question. So we're just about to hit 5 million. By 2020, we want to hit 10 million installs. Right? We want to see upwards of 30,000 apps on the ecosystem. Mark has very publicly said he wants to see 10,000 apps on there. We're north of 3,000 at the moment, so we've got a huge amount of scale to do. But what we're not going to do is to scale to that by building more apps. We're starting to see the ecosystem diversify quite heavily, so we're starting to see people create templates to use in the community. We're starting to see people create algorithmic capabilities that they can deploy algorithms within Salesforce. We're starting to see integrations with data sources. So rather than building just apps, we're seeing the ecosystem expand beyond apps and to become much more componentized and delivering sort of singular points of value rather than entire applications. Because at the end of the day, the customer interface now is becoming a single screen with different pieces of capability integrated with it. So what do OEM partners use and not use compared to other partners? So when I mentioned before, there are 2 kinds of partners in the ecosystem. There are those that build on top of our platform and they sell to non-Salesforce customers as well as Salesforce customers. And there are people that build essentially an add-on on top of our platform. So the main difference is that if you are one of the, what we call an ISV Force partner, you have to sell on top of a Salesforce license. So you get access to everything that everybody else does, but you have to sell to a Salesforce customer. So you're essentially building an add-on. If you're an OEM partner, you get the entire platform license embedded within your application, so that you can sell that to anyone you like. You can build any number of custom modules on top of it. You can build your entire application from the ground up. You have the freedom to build whatever you want, and then resell that to your customers with our license embedded within it. So those are the only 2 differences. The capabilities are the same. It's just really about the go-to-market model that you use, whether you're selling to existing customers or you're selling to net new customers. And I think that is, what's the adoption rate of apps in the enterprise customer base? So the default adoption rate is 83%, right? So that's across the board, that's the entire customer base. But when you go into the Fortune 100, that rate jumps to 89%. So our goal is to get that over the next 5 years to 90% across the board. 90% of our customers have an app. However, the adoption rate for that Fortune 100 set, that cohort right at the top end of the scale, the enterprise customer set, is 89%, so significantly higher than the typical business, which is, not surprising, but obviously very, very good to see. And I think that's it. Thank you very much indeed for your time. I appreciate it. Cheers.